So welcome students. We are focusing on the PMI project management mock exam, the project management mock exam, and we will be going through each question and we will be able to discuss it. So starting out with this mock exam, before this mock exam, we had several prep exams that prepared us. So the exam that you're going to have, it's going to be 45 minutes, possibly 45 questions. So some of these questions you only have 1 minute to answer. That's the reason why when we started with the mock exam, after today, we will put a timer on it. So it's not about answering the question correctly now. It's about when we move forward, answering the question much more faster. So on my slide, I have the first question. And I know your questions were scrambled, but Jesse gave you this very PowerPoint without the answers. So you will have to make a note and select the correct answer in this PowerPoint. If you want the PowerPoint on email, man, Jesse, you can also email it. Oh, sorry, the PDF, no? The PDF, yeah. So let's start out with this question. What role does quality assurance play in project development process? Now, we covered basic content on quality assurance. We have 4 answers and we need to decide which is the best. Now, already I can tell you in advance that these questions are very close to one another here. Let's start with the first one. It ensures the project is delivered within budget. So we need to think, is it really that answer? The next one, it ensures employees are qualified. So there we deal with skills to complete their tasks assigned, the assigned tasks. It's a bit close, but okay, let's just have a look at it. The next one, it ensures the project is delivered on time. It ensures procedures are followed to meet standards for performance. Which answer is the closest? That's what we need to answer. Sometimes some questions can be very close cut, but when we deal with quality, I find one answer. Or when we deal with questions, we need to always look for one word. And I'm going to journey with you how we look for one word. What speaks out for me in quality assurance is this one word: to meet standards for performance. So sometimes the answer is also found in the question. But we need to analyze these words and we need to argue with ourselves. So I find quality assurance very close to meet standards for performance. Because when we deal with quality, a person that associates with quality is a person that associates themselves to meet specific standards. So for this answer in the exam is going to be, it ensures procedures are followed to meet standard for performance. Everyone okay with that? Why it cannot be the others is the following, because the other three are sort of generic. It ensures delivered within a budget. We can argue with that. Employees, that's more human resource. It ensures project is delivered on time. Those are the or stuff that's associated with project, lag time, and all that. But quality assurance deals with to meet standards for performance. Now, the next question is the following. The steps used, what is a project life cycle? Who can tell me which one? And I think you've answered this already. Let's have a look. The steps used to identify the best possible solution to a problem? Not really. The steps used to identify the best possible solution to a problem? No, it's not that. The task performed to deliver a product, a service, or result with specific features and functions? No. The series of phases that the project passes through from start to completion? Yes, that's the correct one. The other one, the sequence of activities that determine the shortest possible duration of a project. Now, what's the key word here? Life cycle. I see the word life cycle. That's the reason why when they ask what is a project life cycle, you are dealing with a series of phases that the project has to pass through from start to finish. And the phases is our initiation phase, our planning phase, execution, or some people would say implement. And then we would have some people in their phase will have a closing of the project also. So those are phases that a project must go through. Any project from start to finish must have those phases. There must be planning, and then there must be initiating. There must be execution, and there must be closure also. So that is the life cycle we deal with. So the correct answer there is the series of phases that a project passes through from start to finish. Okay. You are one of the team members planning a small community event. The project manager assigns you to a task of planning for the event at a sports ground. This is a scenario. What responsibility and authority do you have regarding your assigned task? Let me rephrase it. The project manager assigns you the task of planning the event at the sports ground. Now, the project manager has appointed you, meaning that you're not the project manager. The project manager appointed you to execute a task. Well, let's have a look at these options. And I've already seen the answer. You can change the location without approval and set up of the community event. That cannot be. Why? You need approval to make such a huge change. You can't go and change the location if the project manager has already allocated the sports ground. You need to inform the sponsor directly about the change and then move the event to the new location. No, it's only the project manager that deals with the project sponsor. You can't go and deal directly with the project sponsor. You have been appointed to execute the task. Already that answer is wrong. And you know where I also pick it up? With the word directly. You need to inform the sponsor directly about the change and then move to a new event to the new location? Absolutely no. I like this one. You need to speak with the project manager about changing the location and wait for approval. That answer is correct. Okay, so we get that one. What is the benefit of creating a lesson learned document? First, to start off, when we talk about lessons learned, in project management, we don't say what failed, what didn't go your way, or why did it go wrong. We don't use that language in project management. We talk about lessons learned. What have we learned out of this project? The good lessons, not to say bad lessons, we will say what are the challenges that you faced. So you have meeting with a client to provide closure to the project. You have sharing best practice approaches amongst team members, ensuring team members are held responsible for their mistakes, creating marketable materials that can be used to promote the product. What becomes important is best practices. That's a keyword that you will always find. If someone will ask you, you've done this project, can you share me what you've learned out of this project? What are the best practices? What can we learn out of it? So, point number 2 is the correct answer. The first one, meeting with a client to provide closure to the project, that is unrelated towards lessons learned. Ensuring team members are held responsible for their mistakes. It's a very harsh one. Creating marketable material that can be used to promote the product, that is completely unrelated. When we deal with lessons learned, we're actually dealing with what we call best practices. You have contracted an external supply to provide a tool needed for the development phase in your project. The tool is being delivered, and the project team find the tool acceptable and they are using it. Why should you now close the contract with the supplier? Firstly, we have an answer that says to prevent the supply from contacting team members for the payment. No, that's a bit weird. To inform the procurement team that the new tool has been delivered. Yes, that's the correct answer. To thank the supplier for delivering the tool according to the contract. Too generous. To request that the supplier be paid for the delivery of the tool. So if something is delivered, so that means some of these answers can be correct. Let's argue that. But in a case like this, there's nothing wrong to say thank you. But in a case like this, it's not being about generous here, is what is the most important answer closest that you must do. So when something is delivered successfully, meaning who needs to know that the item has been delivered? Obviously, those that have procured the tool, they need to know that the tool has been delivered. That's why the answer is to inform the procurement team that the new tool has been delivered. So that's the correct answer there. Recent feedback from a client requires adjusting the scope of a project as well as some additional funding. Who needs to provide the approval to move forward with the changes? Is it the project manager, resource manager, business analyst, or project sponsor? What are we dealing with here? We are dealing here with money. What word is closest to money? If I have to rephrase it, it's none other than the project sponsor, because he is sponsoring the project. The project manager is managing the project. And this problem which we have requires the adjustment of the scope of the project. Not only that, now it's the project manager's job that he can adjust the scope and say, we need to, from working 3 days, we're working 5 days. That's a change of the scope. We're not going to use that material. We're going to use other selected material. That's the job of the project manager. But because this scenario includes as well as some additional funding, it now involves the project sponsor who's funding the project. And that's the reason why who needs the approval to move forward with the changes? None other than the project sponsor. Whenever you see the word sponsor and whenever you see the funding, you connect the dots. As a project manager, what information do you need to include in a status update to your boss? Status update, or we can say project status update. Someone asks you what's the update of your recent activity for work completed. Then you have four answers: a description of the project scope, project work that has been completed, project goals and objectives, a list of project stakeholders. I find the second answer correct, because a description of the project scope doesn't change. It remains the same. Because when the project started, the description remained the same throughout, describing the project. The third one, project goals and objectives, has been established within the planning phase. If there was a change, yes, possible, but otherwise, it remains the same. You have a list of your project stakeholders. What are we saying when we talk about project stakeholders? People that are part of the project. Any project, your suppliers, your clients, the people that you're dealing with, a community. If you do a construction project, for instance, in a community, there's various stakeholders. If you set up a early childhood development, a creche in a community, there will be a range of stakeholders associated with that. So that cannot be the answer. The boss wants from you what work has been recently completed and what is still incomplete. So the word complete for me is very important, and I associate the word complete with status update. Again, I'm giving you a keyword for the exam. Okay, let's have a look here. You need to select a project management approach for your team. Key considerations include the team has worked on similar projects. The deliverables must comply with standards and regulations. The project stars are well defined. The project deliverables are clearly defined. Again, what must we do here? You need to select a project management approach for your team. What are we talking about? We are talking about how are we going to do this? The question of how. That is when we talk about an approach. Now, there's a few considerations given here with the team. Now, let's have a look. If the scenario, okay, I see this one is jumping. Okay, so based on that scenario, we're talking about approaches now, and that is what we learned in lesson 3. What project management approach should you choose? Let's go back. The team has worked on similar projects, meaning that they have experience. The stuff that we need to do, let me use that word, the stuff that we need to do must comply with our standards and regulations. People must know very well what their tasks are throughout the project. And if there's any deliverables that people need to do, it must be clearly defined. It must not be ambiguous. So, in order to have that approach, you must have what we call a predictive management approach. Predictiveness is telling you about the project, how it will happen, how it must happen, what the start date is, what the end date is. Because in your planning, you are predicting. Does it make sense? All of us in the project life cycle has a planning phase. No project can run without a planning phase. So it is in your planning phase that you're actually are undertaking a predictive project management approach. So the answer in this case is predictive. Okay. As a project manager, how should you encourage your team to be focused, energized, and positive for the duration of the project? Now, this answer is very simple because the responsibility here is to motivate each team member. You can't, it says, give each team member the authority to change project deadlines. No, that's trouble. That's not motivation. The other one says report poor behavior to upper management. That's not so much motivating. Rank each team member's performance during team meetings. The best answer here, discover what personally motivates each team member. That is the answer here. And that is very important, especially in the corporate companies. If you look at one of the companies, Google itself, out of my readings and my observations, reading the articles, just before COVID, yeah, they would spend a lot of focus on the culture of their team. I was fortunate to be at the Google offices in Johannesburg, and I had a look at the offices and how they were doing things, and they focused a lot on the culture because they believe somehow it finds a way of motivating the person to perform optimally. So motivation in this regard is the correct answer. Yeah, thank you for that one. Keyword is encourage. Yeah, thank you for that. Okay, now you are estimating the cost of a project by using the budget from a similar project last month. Which type of budget estimation technique are you using? It would be very easy to identify this answer. Why? Because in the sentence it says, by using the budget from a similar project, meaning we are now diving into history, historical estimation. You're using previous budgets to help you to develop this new budget. So, what type of technique are you employing? Is the one that is called historical estimation. That's the second one, because you are estimating from a previous project or let me say, a similar project of such nature. So, again, let's use construction as an example. You can't go use um, a budget that has to do with something completely different in construction. You have to use something similar. And that's the reason why historical estimation is the answer there. Keyword again, I've drawn from the word similar and also historical. Okay. Which component of the project management plan outlines the work needed to meet project objectives and deliverables? Which component of the project management plan outlines the work needed to meet project objectives, and deliverables? When we talk about meeting it, it's associated with time. It's associated also with scope. Remember when we started out, we spoke about the triple constraint. And in that triple constraint, we spoke about time, quality, and also scope. So You can say schedule management plan, but schedule is a bit too limited. A resource management plan, that's only resources. Cost management plan, that's only budget, money. But when you deal with the scope management plan, you're dealing actually with everything. So that is a component that outlines the work needed to meet the project objectives and deliverables. Your customer states that the packaging for the new product being delivered must be easy for everyone to open. Okay, now we're assuming that this project management team worked on some packaging stuff, and part of their deliverables was to make sure that once it opens up, it's not complicated. It can be a box or something. But during their product testing, only 60% of the people were able to open the packaging easily. And we know if something doesn't open easily, it causes severe frustration. So let's assume that 40% were frustrated out of that. Yes?
So what you outlined
Where is this?
the previous one.
Oh, the keyword. Okay, let me quickly go back. Um, I couldn't find an exact one. That's the reason why I settled for the word component. Component of the project, yeah, plan outlines. Because what actually happens is when you talk about scope, you're actually talking about everything. Someone can come to you and say, what's the scope of this project? If someone come and ask me what's the scope, they're actually asking me what is everything about this project. So they need to be answerable for how much resource material I must use, how much time it's gonna take, and what the budget is gonna be, because that is actually what he's asking me. You see, that's the reason why the other three answers, schedule, resource, and cost, is not a complete answer. Although you must respond to it. You have to respond towards schedule, which is time, resources, how much material you're gonna use, and money. But those three may be the answer, but not the complete answer. So that's the reason why I have to settle for the word scope management plan. Yeah, I hope that makes sense. So the word scope, I'm just linking to the word component. Yes, that component. Thank you. Going back to this one, as the project manager, what should you do now with this situation? 60% of people are opening up the package successfully, but the other 40% struggled. So now, what must you do? Meet the product testers to change the results. That can be an answer. Inform the customer that more than 50% is an acceptable result. Request a team meeting to decide on corrective action. Inform the project sponsor that the project has failed. So, meet with the product testers to change the results. The product testers are the people who receive the package. He can't meet those people that are the end users that are experiencing it because they have experienced it. You can't tell them that you have opened up the package wrong. You first have to open it from the left hand side or the right hand side. No, the product testers has nothing to do with it. They experienced it and 60% opened it up easy and 40% struggle. That's just the reality. So that answer cannot be correct. Inform the customer more than 50% is an acceptable result, that customer will go crazy. So you can't give that information to the customer. You need to sort out the project. Also at the bottom, inform the project sponsor that the project has failed. That answer is not correct. The right thing to do is to request a team meeting to decide on corrective action or decide on what is our intervention. How are we going to sort out this problem now? So that's the reason why you need to meet with the team to discover why are people struggling. So coming back to when we were taught project management, we learned something in the fishbone diagram. The fishbone diagram taught us to analyze the root problem. Where did it go wrong? So if I'm the project manager and I need to sit down with the team, what approach am I going to take? Although this is now not in here, but I'm just sharing it with you. That fishbone diagram will allow you to go through all the channels and say, this is where the problem is at. Maybe it can be from the supplier. whereby they bought the packaging. So they even need to investigate that, where the complication is, to make it very easy for people to open up this unique packaging. So you have to request a team meeting with your team members to decide what is the way forward and what is the corrective action. So some stuff has a sort of common sense approach to it. What is the purpose of following a change management process? Very, very important. We're talking about change management. We're talking about things that are changing within a project. The one answer can be to show the project sponsor that you follow correct procedures, to delay a new feature request so that the customer will reconsider any changes, to document the change in scope and any impact of the project, to inform the customer that your team takes their suggested product changes seriously. The correct answer in this case is to document the change in scope and any impact to the project. Can you remember the word scope creep? When something is creeping into your scope, because that is when a change takes place. So when we deal with change management processes, you need to document the change. And if there's changes, then a project manager needs to sign off from the change and say, is this change now acceptable? Because someone needs to take the responsibility of the change. Therefore, if someone has made a change on a plan, people are going to ask you, where's the email? In the case that it says to document, yes, but we have to email it. Did someone approve the email? Did someone say yes when you requested the change? These are the things that can evolve to arguments. So what becomes important of change management process is to document the change in your scope. What does it mean? It means that if a project was meant to be for 50 days and you guys are ending up doing it for 70 days, you will have to go back to your scope and go update it there. Where you said 50, you now need to change it to 70. Because if someone reads the document, you would want to know what happened and how long it took. So you have to tell him in your scope, it was 70 days. That's very important. You need to tell him in your scope that this project took 70 days. You are open to say it was initially planned for 50 days, but we evolved to extra 20 days, which calculates to 70 days. And that's important that that is read in your scope. Your scope is always that first part of the document that you need to write to someone that wants to understand what took place and what changes took place. And also, if you decide that there are extra 20 days to your project, it will definitely have an impact on your project. Obviously, time, but it's going to impact resources because maybe you need to use more material, but it's also going to impact on your budget. So you also need to express that this 20 days now has incurred 500,000 Rand. So that is when you make a necessary change. So that's the work of the project manager. Once he makes that change, he also needs to have evidence how it impacts the rest of the team. So change management is something very important to document and also to get approval. You can't get approval in the corridor and say, yo, that guy said yes. It's trouble.
With regard to the scope management planning, there's one that occurs before the
Yeah.
project, and now the scope clean comes in. So that scope clean gets attached to the original project plan.
Yes.
Then you can't change the original. You can add that scope clean
Yes.
and then attach the then document.
Yes, no, definitely. I agree with you on that. You can do it in that way as evidence to prove we need to have extra 20 days. But what it wants here, you can rewrite your scope. But if someone is going to read it at the end, then they need to know in total, like it's 70 days. But you are also right there because people are doing things differently in project management. Some will add it at the end and some will maybe add it at the beginning. So I totally agree with you on that. So what you have to make sure is to document it in your scope and also inform the impact of the project. Coming back, let's go back to our phases. Your scope, you do in your planning phase. All documentation is done in our planning because it is in. So when we talk about work breakdown structure, that blocks that we have at the bottom and all that. Everything happens in planning. So that's the reason why it's so important in your project life cycle is to have a planning phase where all the planning takes place. But planning is just another word of creating all these documents. What you need to do, what you need to do, who's assigned. The budget is 500,000. We're going to spend 300,000 on material. 200,000 is for the laborers. So it is in your planning that you do all these documentations. Once everything is done, you then establish a start date to say, this is the day we can start on site. And then everything which you planned now gets executed. No wonder we call it the execution phase. You see, so most stuff that we're talking about when it comes to documentation is what takes place in the planning phase. Yes, it doesn't mean that we stop when it comes to execution, but think of execution as a checklist. We did this, we did that. And that's the reason why when we talk about progress update, if someone comes to me and they give me progress update, it must be based on what they've planned. It cannot be based on what they thought that they were doing. We did this. I will have to check the planning document and check if you guys are doing the actual work here. So just to give you insight on that. So coming back to change management, we need to document it. But although the answer is not here, we also need to get approval from the project manager that a change has taken place. And in a case like that, when once a project manager knows that a change has taken place, it's his responsibility now to communicate to everyone on his team and say, this is the change that has taken place. So that's the overall understanding when it comes to change management process. For instance, if I make a change here at campus, we take a business management course and I change the module. I decided, like this weekend, I told him, our graphic and web design, one of our modules are getting old because companies are now using new software. Are we preparing the learners fully? So there's this new thing that came out called Figma, something similar to Canva. These things are almost now trending. There's a new thing that is trending. We're all using Canva on our phones to make posters and that. But Canva has become a great tool because we've purchased Canva. Like all this work is on Canva. If Jesse jumps the boat tomorrow, I still have Canva. I don't need to go to his laptop and say, Jesse, where's all my PowerPoints? I put everything on Canva. So I'm busy digitizing everything. So Canva already has everything. Then I'm using the Gmail. I paid my Google Workspace. So that means all our emails are now in the cloud in terms of the same Gmail feature we use. It's the same one. We just select our organization and we store everything in the cloud. So students now ought to learn and they need to have a cloud mindset. So when I saw this new module called Figma, a lot of IT people are using it because it just helps with the workflow. Figma has a bit of project management into it, but it also has some illustrations into it. So I watched a few tutorials this past weekend, and I saw this was a game changer because companies are using it. So if we're going to have interns finishing our graphic and web design, and they don't know Figma, they're going to be a bit embarrassed. So that's the reason why I spoke to in my facilitator group. I spoke and said, listen here, we now, to offer graphic design, we now need to make a change. And they now need to do their research because I want that module in. But that, what is it going to affect? It's going to affect my flyers that's already printed. It's going to affect Nigel, who's already with costing. So you have to take off that module. You need to recost it. You need to add it. You need to come to Jesse and say, how many days can Figma be trained? Jesse needs to know that because Jesse needs to check if I download Figma, is it a trial of 30 days, 20 days? Is it 10 days? Because if he is going to download a trial of 10 days and he puts down several days for Figma, he's going to have a problem. So it's going to create complications. So we need to understand technicality now first, and we need to bring in that module to make it for the students ready. So meaning that then everyone in the staff now must know that this change in the module is taking place because we need to print out new manuals also. So can you understand? I'm just giving you an understanding. Once you make one change, the ripple effect it has, and if we don't have proper communication channels, then we're going to have a problem. So that is how important change management is in any organization. Okay. Who is responsible for overseeing the daily activities of a project from start to finish? Very simple answer. It's not the client, not the vendor. It's the project manager. Start to finish. He needs to ensure that everything is on track. Okay. What is the primary goal of creating a work breakdown structure? WBS. We are always introduced with this. What's the primary goal? There may be many goals, so we have to read this question very carefully. Some answers can be very close, but we're looking for the primary goal, the primary one. To determine which team members will be responsible for each project activity, to prepare an organizational chart for the project team members, to describe the key stakeholders and their roles in the project, to decompose the work into assignable work activities. Did you know that all of these answers are correct? To be honest with you, but it's not so close. So, the most important, they're not asking what is the goal, they're asking what is the primary goal, resulting in the last one to be the answer. Decompose work into assignable work activities. You know why is that primary? Because that's the first thing you must do. If you have a big project, you first break it into smaller parts. Before you assign people to it, before you assign resource to it, before you assign budget to it, you first break it into smaller parts. That is your first step. That's why this answer to decompose work into assignable work activities will be the correct answer in the exam. In a project, what describes work that should be included and work that should be excluded? In a project, what describes work that should be included and work that should be excluded? Have a look there. Now, what are we saying? We have work breakdown structure, we have project baseline, we have a business case, and we have a scope statement. Coming back, the keyword describes work. So I can rephrase my statement by saying, where do I describe the work that I'm going to do? So it says what describes work that should be included and work that should be excluded. It cannot be the WBS because the WBS are smaller projects that is subjected to the big statement. It cannot be a project baseline, which has to do with time. It cannot be a business case. It is your scope statement. Huh? You will see. We don't a lot talk about business case in project management or in this course. So the answer that's very close there is scope statement. Because why? You are describing your work. What work you are going to do. Again, we're dealing with scope. Scope is what the project entails. Scope describes the project for someone that has no idea, that is coming from the outside, that wants to understand this project in a very brief way. He would want to ask you, give me the scope statement to read. Once he reads the scope statement, then he knows what is going on. We in business planning, we call it the executive summary. The first one, the first paragraph which we read must give me an insight what the business is all about. The scope statement is exactly the same. Okay. A project team is arguing about the start date for an important task in the project. The team is arguing. The project sponsor intervenes and sets the start date. He intervenes and he decides this is the start date. Which type of conflict resolution technique is the project sponsor using? I can already tell you it's forcing because he steps in and he doesn't smooth the conversation. He doesn't collaborate and ask, what do you think? He's not avoiding, he's forcing the answer. He makes a decision. That's why forcing is an answer. Now, if you did your previous exam preps, you were faced with some questions that related to smoothing. and collaborating. So you need to know the difference. So please note, maybe a question can pop in about smoothing or even collaborating. So you need to know all of it. In this case, if you read the story properly, they just came in, they intervened, and they set aside that without asking people's permission. So it was forcing. Your project team is using an agile project delivery method. In preparation for an upcoming meeting, your manager asks you to review the prioritized list of deliverables. What should you review? Remember, now this is lesson 3 when we started about project management approaches. So, in this question, something must capture me, and that's the word agile project delivery method. That highlights me. So, in preparation for an upcoming meeting, your manager asks you, now what must you review? Remember when we started talking about agile project delivery, there was a whole different language we were introduced. So, what you now need to check for the boss is one thing, it's the backlog. You need to report on the backlog. Backlog, if you go back to the definition, is the work that has been set out. No Kanban board, no, not user story. Those two are completely out. Work breakdown structure, possibly. But the word backlog was introduced when we taught when we taught you about agile project management delivery. So that word backlog belongs to the agile family language. Which scenario demonstrates a schedule dependency? Team members must schedule activities during business hours. Team members must wait to start a task until after another task is completed. Team members must work independently on tasks. Team members must determine the minimum time necessary to complete the project. 1, it's out. 3, it's out. 4, it's out. Why 2? Because dependency means that 2 projects or 2 activities cannot run simultaneously or parallel. One has to wait for the other. That's the reason why we say that some projects are dependent on each other. Example, if you do home improvement and you decide in your kitchen you're going to do the cupboards and you want to do the flooring at the same time, you cannot do both at the same time. It's going to be a mess. You now need to decide, I'm either first going to do the flooring, then I'm going to do the cupboards. What does that mean? It means that those 2 projects now has a dependency. The one first has to complete in order for the other to start. So that's the answer when it comes to schedule dependency. As a project manager, which activity should you perform when using a predicted project management approach? Yeah, it gets again to some complications. We're talking about keyword predicted. Now, what becomes important here is begin the current sprint before planning for the next one. Now, for some of you, I know some of you were absent and you didn't hear the word sprint. Sprint is just another way of saying to you a work breakdown structure. But in the 21st century language, we're not using so much the word WBS. They talk about sprints. Can you complete those 5 sprints for me? So that's the language we talk about sprints. So sprint has a started and ended, but we're talking about smaller tasks. So that is what we're talking about when we talk about sprints. The other option, review deliverables for each iteration with the customer. So why I say create a detailed project plan that includes all the project activities is predicted. Predicted means you would want to know the outcome. You would want to know how much work is involved here. No wonder you have to create a detailed project plan that includes not some of the activities, all the project activities. So the moment you see predicted, you are dealing with something that you would want to anticipate the outcome. That's the reason why You can't take the second one, review deliverables. No, you can't review. You have to create it, a detailed plan, and it has to include not some of the activities, all project activities. The other last answer is view. You see, these verbs can confuse in the exams. That's the reason why I'm talking to you today. So view, review, begin. It's ambiguous words. The good one for me is create a detailed project plan that includes all the project activities. Okay. Who is responsible for completing project deliverables? It cannot be the business analyst, neither the sponsor. Product managers and team members, remember, you have your big project and you have your small deliverables. And the small deliverables were given to team members to complete. Because remember the word that it says project deliverables. Small project, I'm not going to use the word small in this regard, but project deliverables already tell you that the project was broken down into deliverables. So, obviously, it connects with the team members that must complete it. The answer there is team members. You provide the following information to your boss. Work planned versus work completed. Budget plan versus budget spent. This is the work that you're giving him issues, and you also give him more roadblocks or challenges. You provide that following information to your boss. So what type of communication are you providing? That's the first question. The communication you're providing is actually now reverse. The answer for the previous one. Team members. No. Oh, this one. Where are you, Jesse? No, man. I'm on this one here. Oh, yes. Oh, to your boss. Okay, yeah. We're going to be there now. That is part of this. Oh, part, yeah. Sorry, yes. We give a scenario slide, yes. So, you're speaking to your boss. The boss doesn't want a business plan, neither contingency plan. The project chart has been already created. You are giving your boss a status update. Can you see how they reverse these questions? Because previously we now had a question on status update, and now they're changing the question into communication. What type of communication are you providing? You're providing your boss a status update. A status update of what? Let's go back. Of the work planned versus the work completed. A status update on the budget planned versus the budget spent. That's a status update. You're providing him even an update on the issues you face or even the roadblocks. So, status update. That's your answer. Yeah. Any questions on that? Okay. What impact does gold plating have on a project? Now, what impact does gold plating have? I think Jesse covered that with you. What gold plating? Let's look at the answers. The scope increases and the cost to the customer remains the same. The scope remains the same and the cost to the customer increases. The scope increases and the cost to the customer increases. The scope remains the same and the cost to the customer decreases. So, what becomes important is understanding first the concept of gold plating. So, gold plating in your previous PowerPoint, in project management, it is the practice of adding extra features. No wonder we talk about gold plating. It's extra features that you add or functionality to a project that were not requested by the client or specified in the original scope. Again, we're dealing with the scope creep. So we can say safely that gold plating is actually a scope creep. Now, if you are making changes and you bring in gold plating, must the customer pay for it? For the extra features? No. If the company, if we are doing digital services there, if someone asks us to scan something, and it scans and it comes out and someone presses now wrong or do some extra stuff with the scanning, adding some quality onto it. Let's say it's a poor quality document. We now try to, let's say it's a photo scan of an old photo, and we do some changes on the printer, but it's still a scanning service. Because we sat with that printer now for 5 extra minutes, doesn't mean we need to charge the person extra. Not really. Because the poor quality photo that was now brought in, that requires us to spend 10 minutes in optimizing it, increases our scope of work. Because we can't spend 10 minutes on this photo printer or changing it. Does it impact the client? That's the reason why we also need to sort of see how we make those changes. So that means if someone comes to you before the time, like if you the person working in front and say, okay, looking at this document, many people bring a lot of booklets here to type. Then we need to do cost estimation first. So before we start typing, we can already see that this is going to take us a few hours. This would be the cost. So it's important that you need to balance between those two. So you will find out that when we did PMI now, we're dealing more with customer service, because you're dealing with the customer or client. So what impact does gold plating have on a project? The scope remains the same and the cost to the end customer increases. That is also a reality. If you communicate it in advance, tell the person in advance. If you have not communicated to the person in advance and you've added it, then it must remain the same for the customer. So that is what we talk about gold plating. Why is contract closure an important element of project closing? Contract closure. Why? It ensures that the work described in the contract is completed as specified. It ensures that the project budget has enough money to cover the expenses. It ensures that workers can no longer access project materials. It ensures that the project management plan is updated with the contract completion status. Okay, all four seems close. The last one, it ensures that the project management plan is updated with the contract completion status, possibly. It ensures that the workers can no longer access project materials. It's a little bit vague. It ensures that the project budget has enough money to cover the expenses. Completely unrelated. We are dealing here with contract closure. In many cases, people have to sign a contract when a project ends to say that it's ending because you are in that phase. So now you're dealing with something with something called contract closure. So in your contract closure, you now need to stipulate and say, listen, all the work that has been described in the contract, it is completed as specified. Very simple. So the first answer is correct. It ensures that the work described in the contract or the work described in the contract and the scope or the scope statement and the project charter is completed, keyword, as specified. That is important and that is the correct answer. The last one also sounds close, so that's going to allow you to argue. Let's argue there. It ensures that the project management is updated. Updated can happen through any phase. Planning phase, execution phase. We don't want to hear the word updated. We want to hear the word completed. Can you see that the word completed is in the first bulleted answer? That's my keyword with project closing. I hope that makes sense. Okay. A project team is having difficulty meeting deadlines and focusing on the task that needs to be completed. After meeting with each team member, the project manager decides to offer a paid bonus to 3 of them. Extra time of the 2 of them and the ability to work remotely to the remaining 2 members if they can complete the project on time. That's a scenario. Why did the project manager decide to provide the team members with different perks? Some he gave extra bonus, and some he gave off. And for those who gave off, to say you can work remotely. So the project manager had additional budget that needed to be spent. That could be an answer. The project manager wanted to reward the team members with something fun. The project manager hoped that random perks would inspire the team to work harder. The project manager discovered how to motivate each team member individually. That is the last answer. Now, that is the same as the book. There is a slide which we went through in motivating team members, but also finding out how to motivate each team member uniquely. And I think this question can actually speak for himself, yes. So thank you for that one. During a project, your team develops new procedures to create certain product features more efficiently. Why should the team archive the project documents and new procedures? Or let me rephrase, why should the team archive or document the project documents and new features? To identify the employees that discovered the new procedures. Remember, that's the reason why in South Africa we still have that please call me issue. Yes, maybe he could have answered that question. To show the sponsors the efficiency of the team, to receive recognition for developing new procedures, to provide reference material for teams working on similar projects. Again, this is the correct answer, the last one. Because now, if they came up with some new stuff and they were so creative, it's important to document it. So when another team embarks on a similar project, they will be able to use this reference material as lessons learned. Remember, we spoke about lessons learned? So this is what you put in your documentation of lessons learned, the reference material. Maybe you use the new software and you found out that this software helps us a lot for cost estimation. And you decided, like, for all these years, we'll be using Microsoft Excel. Why can't we use a new software called Microsoft Power BI? It does things so much easier. Now, because the team never knew about Microsoft Power BI, someone on the team member was skilled and said, let me show you. And once you showed the whole team, everyone said, listen here, let's dump Excel and let's use Power BI. So something like that must be documented when one of the team members embarked on using a new software or was creative. So to provide reference material for teams working on similar projects. Again, very easy answer. What is a dependency? Very easy. It would be a relationship between two or more tasks. It's not an accidental change in the project requirements. The work needed to complete the project. No. The difference between estimated and actual length of a task. Sometimes that can move a little bit closer, but it's not actually that. It's a relationship between two or more tasks. And that relationship is the one starts first and the other one starts later. Which document is issued by the project sponsors to formally authorize the existence of a project and is the starting point for the initial project planning? Which one is supposed? Remember, it's not the project management plan. No, it cannot be, because that gets developed afterwards. It cannot be the scope statement, because that has to be done by the project manager. He has to write it out. It cannot also be the procurement contract. No, it's the project charter. The project charter is, why are we doing this? What's the reason of us embarking on this project? If someone wants to understand the reason or the rationale of a project, or let me say the business case, like in future they have mentioned that LC River will have a clinic for that regard. Someone needs to go read the project charter. Why? Why do we need another clinic? What's the reason? Is there an increase of certain things taking place? So once you do a project charter, it's also associated with your stats, your statistics. Why do I need to do it? And many times we need to draw from our stats. So your project charter is your why. Remember that. But you must also remember that your project management plan or your project statement, your project management plan is actually your how. How am I going to do this? That is where you develop your scope statement and also your project management plan. So those are the simple questions we need to ask ourselves once we embark on a project. Many people will ask why. So to cover many contracts, people release a project charter. You are an event planner for an upcoming wedding. In your meetings with a couple, they often disagree about colors and styles for the wedding decorations. When you try to get involved, it tends to make the disagreement worse. So you decide to give them time to talk about their choices. Eventually, the couple agrees on a joint decision. Which conflict resolution technique are you using for the couple? Definitely, it's collaborating. There's no withdrawal taking place. There's no compromising taking place. There's no forcing. There is collaborating. Both of them are collaborating because they made the keyword there. If I go back, Jesse, to your slide, if you go back, my keyword there is joint decision. Joint decision. That is how, because you can fall victim and decide to select compromise. But compromise is when someone steps down from their personal view and adopt yours. So you can just check there. So this is collaborating taking place. Why? Because they've made a joint decision. You need to select a project management approach for an upcoming project. Key considerations, you are working with new technologies and processes. The scope of the project is unclear. The client wants to be informed and involved in all phases of the project. You have a highly qualified and motivated team. The project requires a significant amount of testing and retesting. This is the scenario here. This is your scenario. So, with your scenario, there's a question. Which project management approach should you choose? There's adaptive, there's predictive, there's critical, and there's also hybrid. Now let's go back. Let's go back and go read it again. Um, if I read this, I can already tell you, I struggle to see predictive. You're working with new technologies, new stuff. The scope of the project is keyword, it's unclear, meaning it's not predictive. The client wants to be informed and involved in all phases of the project. Okay. You have a highly qualified and motivated team, yes. But the word unclear for me and the word new puts me in a space where I say it's not predictive. It has to be adaptive. Yes. So there's only two ways a project can go: predictive or adaptive in your notes. So your keyword there, what adaptive was, it was unclear, and there was some new software and processes that came in. So when new stuff comes in, you must have a adaptive approach towards what you're going to do. You can't predict because it's new software. We don't know how long is it going to take. So it becomes adaptive. Why is quality assurance included in the project development process? Okay, there's a few answers there. Now, when we deal with quality assurance, we need to now search for one of these stuff. To motivate project team members to complete the project milestone on time. Okay, let's see. To verify that project expenses remain under baseline budgets. Maybe, maybe not. The last one, to evaluate the performance of new employees. Possibly. Can we see some answers are gravitating towards? But the actual answer is to ensure products meet specifications and requirements. So that is the closest answer in association with quality assurance when it comes to project development processes. So whatever product is developed within this project that they are busy with, it must meet specifications and requirements as specified in the documentations. These project team members cannot do their own stuff. That means they compromise the quality of the project. Okay, so that's the answer. To ensure products meet specifications and also requirements. What describes the project's requirements, including major deliverables and the exclusions of the project? I think what describes a project's requirements? Requirements. Again, this answer is very simple. I think this is a duplicate. It's a scope statement. Let's check on the PowerPoint, man, if this is a duplicate, no? Or maybe the same question typed twice. I think so. So again, keyword here is describing the project requirements, including major deliverables and the exclusions of the project. It cannot be business, guys. I think we know that. They're not asking for a status report. No, they're not asking for a work breakdown structure. Okay, we'll be finished now. At the team meeting, your project sponsor states the customer is concerned that the software being developed will not perform reliably. As the project manager, how should you respond? What must your response be? Let's see. Meet with the customer to understand the basis of their concerns. Ask the engineering team to increase software reliability. Inform the project sponsor that the customer is using old performance data. Email the customer to inform them that reliability will be addressed at the end of the project. No, they cannot. The last one, email the customer to inform that reliability will be addressed. No, if the project is done, you can't focus on quality. It must be sorted out now. You cannot inform the project manager. You have to meet the customer to understand the basis of their concerns. Very simple answer there. Meet with the customer to understand the basis of their concerns. Okay, again, we're dealing with adaptive here now. In an adaptive project management approach, which statement describes the actions of the team members? Let's explore the four. They work on the highest priority items in the product backlog. They work through all the tasks sequentially to complete the final product. They gather all customer requirements at the beginning of the project. They take turns leading the project so they can each gain experience in leadership. No. So, what becomes important in this adaptive approach, you have two answers that you have to consider. Now, in your notes, when it comes to adaptive project management approach, you will be introduced with one word, and that is product backlog. So, the moment that becomes very important. So, in an adaptive project management approach, if you read through that, you will be dealing, and you can already see that the other three, they work through all the tasks sequentially to complete the final product. Not really. That is not what adaptive is about. They gather all customer requirements at the beginning. Yes, you must do it. But that is not what yet adaptive is all about. Adaptive has to do with a product backlog. So try to make a note on the word product backlog. That becomes important because that is associated with adaptive project management. So we're dealing with the highest priority items. Okay, so that is the only slides I have. Let me quickly end this. Stop sharing, recording.